please call the roll.
Mayor Tompak,
Here.
Vice Mayor Bergman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo,
Aye.
Commissioner Fender,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Here.
Okay, the first item we have this evening is a presentation, the 2021 Police Officer of the Year, Officer Robert Quaglia. And Chief, would you please come forward and make the presentation?
In October of 2018, the Sewalls Point Police Department had the tremendous pleasure of hiring Officer Robert Quaglia. Officer Quaglia came to our organization with a combined 13 years of law enforcement experience with the Florida Highway Patrol and Martin County Sheriff's Office, and 9 years of corrections experience in Martin County and Lehigh County, Pennsylvania. Since his hiring, Officer Quaglia has been our top officer in maintaining vigilant security throughout the town, and especially the personal property of our citizens. His vigilance has resulted in numerous discoveries of adverse conditions at homes. He's a very motivated officer who utilizes good officer discretion, maintains a high level of motivation during his shift, and is courteous to citizens. Officer Quaglia communicates well with supervisors and frequently goes beyond his normal duties for the best interest of the town and the police department. He performs his assigned tasks immediately and efficiently. And I receive regular compliments and letters from the citizens of Sewalls Point and visitors to our community pertaining to Officer Quaglia's concern and complimenting his professionalism. Additionally, one of the challenges in a small organization is scheduling training. So when it can be conducted in-house, it's a tremendous benefit. Officer Quaglia has volunteered to become an agency general instructor as well as a firearms instructor. And this is critical to maintaining our organization's compliance. On a daily basis, Officer Quaglia demonstrates a clear commitment to excellence and his loyalty to the department. As the Chief of Police, I'm glad to have a skilled individual in Officer Quaglia, and I rely upon him to provide excellent policing services to the town of Sewalls Point and what we expect from our police officers. Officer Quaglia has contributed significantly to the success of the police department and deserves to be recognized for his efforts, which is why he is the Police Officer of the Year for 2021. Every day, Rob. I know myself is one of those for.
There we go.
Got the selfish and everything.
That's pretty good. Thank you very much. I genuinely appreciate everything you do for us every day. Wonderful. Thank you. Would you like to say a few words?
I'd like to thank everyone for allowing me the opportunity to work in such a wonderful community. You know, all my years in law enforcement, I've never been in a place where the citizens actually appreciate the law. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item 3, public comment. I do have one public comment form. Dottie Lancy, please come forward.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Dottie Lancy, and I am president of the Hutchinson Island Preservation Initiative, or HIPPY as we are referred to sometimes. And I'm here to invite you to our annual meeting. It's going to be held right over the bridge at the Elliott Museum a week from tomorrow, which is March the 30th. And we're hoping that everyone can attend, not only the commissioners, but anybody here is welcome, the general public.
Can you turn the microphone?
Sorry. Did anybody hear me?
Yes.
A little bit.
Just for a little background, HIPPY is a nonprofit corporation, and its mission is to preserve and protect the natural beauty of Hutchinson Island. And we started out in 2018 when a group of property owners over there we came together because we were made aware that they were going to put over 400 streetlights all along A1A from one causeway to the other. And the county had this plan. They said it was a done deal. We knew nothing about it, but we organized and we made the public aware of what was going on. We had over 2,000 signatures to our petition, and there were many, many people that came to the meeting, and the plan was terminated. So, but then shortly after that, COVID came, and so we were unable to have our meetings, and we're very excited to have one now, in a couple days. So you can visit our website, too. I wanted to tell you that we have a website, hippiemartin.com. So it's simply hippiemartin.com, and you will know more about us. And we are excited to have as our speakers this year, Don Donaldson, who is the Deputy Administrator, County Administrator, Merritt Mathewson, the Mayor Stewart, and then Jackie Thurlow-Lippisch, who is with the South Florida Water Management District. So they will have a lot of information to give us, and they will be able to answer some questions on what's going on here, because a lot of things that affect the town of Sewalls Point affect the island. So we hope that everyone here can come. We're looking forward to seeing you, and we hope that you will join our group. And if anyone would like to... I do that. I'm so sorry. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda? If not, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
Commissioner Fender?
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Mayor Tompak?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes.
Okay, next is the consent agenda. Anybody have any questions on that, or a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
I'll
Second.
second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Fender?
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Mayor Tompak?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye. A point of order, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering if we really need to do roll call on every single vote. For a vote like that, that could have been 5 seconds if we just said aye or nay. I'm just wondering if, no, I'm not saying you, this is the mayor's call, but it's been something that's been continued for a long time. Why do we do roll call votes for every vote, that even though that we know that?
Started it.
Huh?
Vinny started it.
Okay. That's another thing. No, okay.
So in other words, the idea would be just if nobody objects, we move on?
Just say aye, yeah.
Without
I don't have a problem. with
Without objection, or, yeah.
that. Okay, that's fine.
I know you want us to be as expeditious as possible.
Well, I think we all want that, eh? Okay, that brings us down to, we have no second reading of any ordinances. The next item is item 8, public hearing on ordinance number 441, lots reduced for public purpose. Would the town attorney please read the ordinance title into the record?
Ordinance number 441 is an ordinance of the Town Commission of the Town of Sewalls Point, amending the Town of Sewalls Point Code of Ordinances, Subpart B, Land Development Regulations, Chapter 82, Zoning, Article 4, Districts and District Regulations, Division 1 in general, by adding Section 82-203, lots reduced for public purpose, for severability, the repeal of laws of conflict, codification, and an effective date. And I've already made note of the change that you made in your LPA meeting in this ordinance.
I'll move approval of ordinance.
Thank you. Just
41.
want to make sure if there's any public hearing. Anybody have any comments in public? Close the public hearing, and there's no comments from the commission. I'll look for a motion.
Move that we approve 441 ordinance with that one parenthetical clarification after the words 50% in Section 2.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Mayor Tompak?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
Commissioner Fender?
Yes.
While I agree with not calling the roll for like the consent agenda and some of the other things, I think on an ordinance we should.
You're the presiding officer, sir. Thank you.
Okay, we have no resolutions, and we have some old business on emergency bridge repairs, and Mr. Capra is here to bring us up to date. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Capper for the record, town engineer. As most of you know, over the last, the town owns 3 public bridges. two of them on Samara Street and one of them on Island Road. And maybe some of the public doesn't know, I know you all probably know, we have a annual inspection typically by the DOT. With COVID, we probably lost some time on one or two of the inspections, but essentially they come to town every 2 years and they inspect underwater and they inspect above water, so the superstructure, the substructure. And essentially, we've been kind of waiting on some reports for a couple of years here now, and basically received them in the last couple months. And so we noted several of the deficiencies. Mainly their spalling of concrete, some deterioration of some exposure of steel, and obviously there's some settlements near some of the approaches to the bridge. And I think most of you know that we, for a couple of years, we've been waiting for a contractor to seal the joints of the approaches of the Sewalls. And 2 months ago, we moved that contract over to our continuing service provider, Sunshine Land Design. They are working on that now, and they also do bridge repair, and we have a continuing service provider for all our construction items in town, mainly infrastructure items, that is. Anyways, I'm recommending that we have them complete these repairs. I think first of all, we've kind of went through the bridge and so forth. We went through the ceiling. I know recently we've had some requests on doing some landscaping around the Island Road Bridge. I really don't want them to go put that landscaping in and then have to tell them I have to tear it out so I can fix these bridges. So we want to get these all fixed at this point. So I think it's important that we get this done. And essentially it's somewhat a specialty item. It's also important that we get them completed properly. And I would like to recommend that we have Sunshine Land Design complete this work as soon as possible. And again, because they're already out there, we will see some savings for them to just move on into the repair of the bridges. They're already sealing the seawalls next to the bridges. And with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes, I heard you just said there were delays with COVID and you've been waiting for a few years on these reports. Is this normal for the inspections that you said they do them every 2 years or something, or that FDOT is supposed to regularly check? Is this the average amount for their inspections?
Well, I will say we've probably seen more spalling items on this report than we've seen in some recent ones. And that could be anywhere from underneath the concrete, some of it on the surface of the bridge, on the basically the abutments and so forth. So we're seeing a little bit more. You're seeing a little more steel exposed. Again, the bridges are getting older. Of course, the one on Samara Street, the two Samara Street bridges were built in the 90s. They're not really that old. The one on Island Road is 63. So we have to keep on them. I mean, I think as long as I've been here, we put aside some money every year for maintenance. And this one's probably a little larger than what we normally have had because we've been waiting on the reports, and we wanted, after having a problem with the past bridge specialty inspectors that took forever to say that they were going to come and never showed up. I think it's important that we kind of get this taken care of now. It's only getting more expensive to do this type of work.
I agree. I think it's important too. We had that capital improvement plan that we did in the part of the planning process, and I know there was a bridge replacement. I'm not actually expecting you to remember our capital improvement plan by heart, but wasn't there a bridge replacement at some point in the future? I don't know. Do you remember how far out it was, or? And is this just regular maintenance, and do you envision that happening still? I think it was the Island Road one or something. I think it was the Island Road one.
I think we estimated at that time somewhere under $1 million, and it was in the estimate that we put in with Kim Delaney's report.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's in there, and obviously we still have to kind of maintain, as you know, these are only accesses to these islands. So it's kind of, we don't really have much of a choice. I mean, unless you want to tell people to go back.
Oh, no. I was just.
But the point is
this is tiding it over till we eventually have to.
Yeah, and Island Road will be the next bridge we'll replace. But we've been putting maintenance on bridges. Every time there's a hurricane, we've always find some item that we have to fix on these bridges. And so, this one, for example, the Island Road Bridge, we've had a little discussion with the people wanting to dress up, as you know, the approaches and everything. But if you go there, you're going to see cracking of the asphalt. You're going to see some settlements, and they may not be totally obvious, but we kind of keep an eye on them. We watch them quite regularly. But the fact of the matter is the longer we let this delay, the more settlements you're going to get. And then I can't afford, obviously, to tell somebody they can't get to their house because we got to close the bridge. So,
Last question, average lifespan for a bridge like the Island Road Bridge?
I'll tell you, it's 50 years because that's what we say about all infrastructure.
Okay.
It's 50 years, but we do as much as we can to kind of, we duct tape, anything we can to try to keep them active as long as possible.
That's it, thank you.
Commissioner Campo?
Yeah, I think we should always be in the habit of asking two questions, and one is, where are we paying for it out of the budget, number one, and number two, is it going to require a budget amendment? I think we should ask that because, of course, we need a lot of these things, but if we're not asking that question, then we're not doing our jobs. So I'm going to ask that question of you or the manager.
The funding for this is going to come from the undesignated operating reserve. There's cash there available presently for that, and it will require a budget amendment, and Holly and I are presently working towards really a comprehensive budget amendment, because there's been a number of things. We have the $3.4 million grant. There's a number of things. It's going to be like 5 or 6 items, and we'll bring that to you in April, mid-year, good time to do it, so.
You're over here.
I'm not used to this.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this to get done. It's something we can't just ignore. If one of these bridges collapses, it's going to cost us almost $1 million versus just maintaining it right now for $46,000. I'm a firm believer in maintenance, and I'd like to move this along.
Second.
And just a quick question, in other words, your motion is to the recommendation that the town manager had in here for the $127,342 plus the 10% contingency for unforeseen issues?
That is correct.
Okay. Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Mayor Tompeck?
Yes?
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
Commissioner Fender?
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Could I just clarify something? Because I don't want the public to think that these bridges are in poor condition. They're not. They're not in poor condition where they're going to fall down. So we basically, we do take care of the bridges here, and they're still in good condition. It's just when you start getting steel that's exposed in rust in the harsh environment we have, it just leads to more and more repairs, which will be more costly than what we're talking about today.
I think people don't understand that the rebar will not degrade until it becomes exposed.
That's right.
And when it starts to spoil and you have exposed rebar, that's when you start losing the strength of the bridge. Thank you. The next item is 12A, which is a discussion item, Town Finance Department staffing, and Mr. Hudson, you have the ball.
Thank you. Did you want to do the addendum first, or we
Sure.
can do the town finance if you prefer first?
I think we can do the addendum first, that'd be fine.
Okay, all right. I called that up. The town, we've been talking about this, I guess, for a little bit. We did receive the appraisal for Mrs. Riley's property at 78 South Sewalls Point Road. This past week, we had 3 possible approaches, either acquiring the entire property or scenario 1, which is acquiring the front portion and then obtaining an easement for the drainage outfall, or scenario 2, which would be acquiring an easement for both the front portion and the drainage easement. The public records laws provides that we can keep appraisals confidential. I think at this point, I've spoken with Mrs. Riley, and she said last time we just gave her a copy, so I don't really see any reason to maintain confidentiality on it, so that would be my suggestion. And it does seem like scenario one is probably going to be the preferred approach. The dollar value of an outright purchase, I think, is probably beyond the town's ability to accommodate at this time. However, we would be able to accommodate the scenario one. There is, it does qualify. We've been advised for funding from the resiliency grant that we just obtained. So we have the availability of funding. Whether we use that, we have to be careful in the funding because we have to match state dollars and federal dollars, so we'll be careful on that, but there's definitely money available to proceed with it. Because it's over $500,000, it will require a second appraisal. I'm in contact with someone to do a second appraisal, get that underway, and what we may want to talk about in terms of strategy is just, let's just basically work off the average of 2 appraisals as kind of an approach, and that would seem to be fair to both the town and Mrs. Riley, and I do have an appointment with her tomorrow, so.
Vice Mayor Kurzman.
Yeah, I would like to go with our manager's suggestion of scenario number 1. It makes the most sense and gives us the most options for what we need that's in our budget.
Mr. Campo?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we're really not in a position to take action until we get the second appraisal. Is that correct?
We can't enter a contract, but we can certainly discuss, principles of approach, such as average of 2 appraisals, and so.
I think I could provide some information to the second appraiser. I know Callaway and Price is a reputable firm, but I think they represent more of the commercial interests. And if we were to look at vacant lots with approximately or greater amount of square footage, I think we'd find values much lower. Specifically, 485 Margarita Road was sold in 2021 for $485,000. Lot on 7 South Sewalls Point Road sold in August of 2021 for $379,000. A lot was sold on Heron's Nest July 2020 for $230,000, and a lot was sold on 20 Lantana. Spec house is being built on it now for $375,000. And I think that when you look at the amount of property that they were using, I think they're equivalent to those lots, and I'd like to maybe pass that information on to the next appraiser to look at, because that's a possible savings of, $100,000 or $200,000. So I think we need to maybe educate, the local, maybe, and I don't know who picked out the appraiser, but perhaps a local appraiser rather than a West Palm Beach appraiser, maybe more residential, just to have kind of the sphere. I think that's, when you take the square footage of a waterfront lot, and we did this with Dr. Nemi's lot, and Dr. Nemi at the time wanted to take the total value of his property and consider each square foot of the property the same value. He goes from the street, Sewalls Point Road, to the river. And what we were trying to say is the portion of land right on the road where it's getting constant traffic back and forth, high density, high noise, is worth less than the square foot that's on the bluff overlooking the St. Lucie, getting the sunset. So I just think that we might get a little bit more involved with the next appraisal and give them some of this information as far as, the valuation, since we've got to do it anyway. So if there's no opposition, I will send that information on to the town manager.
And have you decided who's going to do the second evaluation?
Well, we've been in touch. We haven't entered an engagement yet, so, if there's different appraisers that we ought to be looking at. We're communicating with, let me see if I can, CR Valuations is the name of the company we're working with right now, so.
I don't think we have any objection to, providing information
Yeah,
to these.
certainly.
That's not a problem. I shouldn't speak for everybody. I assume that's what everybody feels. Commissioner Mayfield?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Campo. I think that another appraiser more familiar with the area, I think those are good things to look at. And scenario one, I agree with, so it all sounds good.
Okay, great. So do you need any more direction from us?
I don't think so. I just, with no objection, I'm just going to provide Mrs. Riley with a copy of the appraisal, so.
Okay.
Would you also tell her that we're getting the second one?
Yes, oh, for sure, yeah, that's, yeah,
And this is not.
I will.
Yeah.
yes.
Because the number we were looking at before was in the $400,000 range, and this is looking like the $618,000 range
Right.
in
Yeah, it's,
14, 15 months, so.
Prices are crazy.
I'll tell you.
Okay, Mr. Hudson, you want to move on to the town finance
sure, okay.
department staffing?
Okay, I've had a chance to, I've spent a little time with the finance department now, and 6 or 7 weeks now I've been here. Just to summarize, I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but we have an arrangement with Holly Vath that's $10,000 that goes through May. You had an arrangement with Lori Johns, which was actually, when I pulled the contract out, was only for the month of February. So we really have a gap there. So what we put together is kind of this idea of we would do a combination of part-time, extend Holly's contract further, and then bring in a part-time accountant. And my suggestion is take it through the end of the year. I continue to believe that your next town manager should select who the ultimate finance director should be. So this would get us through the end of the calendar year, not the fiscal year, but the end of the calendar year. So that'll give you the time to hire someone, and then them time to hire their leadership staff there. So money is available in the finance department payroll accounts. I need the commission's approval to amend Holly's contract from $10,000 to $26,400 with a not to exceed of $2,400 the way it's set up now. And then without objection, I'll proceed with hiring of the part-time accountant. I do have someone in mind, by the way, that Holly recommended, so.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yeah, I think this sounds like a great idea. I appreciate you taking the initiative and filling in the gaps where you saw there were gaps, and all within the confines of our budget. So I approve of it.
Commissioner Campo?
I'll ditto that and just point out to the commission that the previous finance director has been budgeted for a total budget of $98,120. So I think this is very efficient use of our dollars. And I would move approval.
Okay.
Please call the roll. And that's to approve the town manager to amend the contract for Holly Vath from $10,000 to $26,400, not to exceed $2,400 per month. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
Commissioner Fender?
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Mayor Tompak?
Yes. Okay, item 12, we're down to item 12B, which is the dock and dock enclosures. And I guess we'll start off with Mr. Torsivia.
Well, you've discussed this a couple times. Jack did a thorough presentation a couple meetings ago about this issue. You've had some folks that have built some docks, and I think when you get to the slides in the backup that the manager's prepared, you'll see that some have permits, most do not. Some have DEP permits, several do not. And we're kind of looking for direction as to how it's almost a two-part question. How do you treat past, folks that already have these, and how do you handle this on a go-forward basis? I don't know, Dan, if you want to pick up from there, because we talked about kind of tag teaming on this one, since we're both
Yeah.
up to our next
Yeah,
box.
yeah, the commission's been talking about this for several months now, and I know, and this is, I think, the fourth or fifth presentation that you've had on it in one form or another. When we started out, we didn't set out to do enforcement of roofs on the east side of the peninsula. We set out to just explore. But in the course of that, we did in fact come across a couple of them at the time. And so when the commission determined not to move forward with any further modifications, we had these two that we were aware of, so we went out and checked and found several others. So what I'd like to do is have Jack give you his presentation and go over the specifics of them. We deliberately did not include names and addresses because at this point, we're not doing finger pointing at anyone. We're just simply saying we have a problem in the community we need to balance out. And then whenever Jack's done with his presentation, we could come back and we have a couple of suggestions that we've kind of tossed around, so to speak, of how to proceed with trying to balance the two kind of views of this. So,
Does it come with Jimmy Buffett music?
If you want to.
Make that happen.
I'm sure, I'll make this really quick because we've gone over this. You'll see some of the slides that you'll be familiar with already, but if you go on to the next slide, what it comes down to is the town ordinance, 62-175, if you really read it, and probably the person that was here before me in this position probably didn't read it in fully understood what it meant, because a couple of those permits were then issued by the town without realizing that it actually violated the town's ordinance on the height restriction. When I first started, I was unaware of this ordinance myself. So I, in fact, issued one of these permits without knowing about this height restriction. Again, if you read it quickly, it doesn't stand out as much as you have to read it several times to fully understand it. And that's why I actually did a drawing to help understand the actual ordinance and what the restricted area, where it is, and how it relates to the land height of the property. And right there, you'll see that the area that we're talking about is a restricted area. Most of the property that is on the east side is in that box right there, the restricted area. So any of the covered docks that are east of here are actually in violation of that. And when I go back and look at the records, some do have permits, some don't. The ones that have permits, it's kind of strange because they have a town permit but not a DEP permit, or they'll have a DEP permit but not a town permit. So it was very vague on some of these. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that's basically the other side of the town where they're higher elevation. So it really doesn't hit any of those properties over there. Go to the next properties. Here's an example of some of the covered docks that are out there that aren't permitted. And you'll see there's a wide range of what they look like. But most of them are of these canvas structures that do meet the wind load. So there's a question like, well, are these even going to be able to meet the building code? And it is. They do. They have engineering that says they will withstand 170 mile an hour winds. But then again, some of them have never been inspected. So I don't know if they're actually connected properly or secure. So that's where you get into the no inspections that were recorded on some of these. So if you go to the next slide, there's another one, just like A, it's another covered one connected to the dock. There's no permits for that one. And then there's C, the next slide. This one actually was submitted, had engineering, and was actually rejected because it didn't have approval from DEP for a roof. Well, then the homeowner went to DEP and obtained approval for a roof. Came back, and then the permit was then issued because DEP said it was fine. So again, I think it was a little bit confusing to whoever was in that capacity that said, well, if the DEP was okay with it, then sure, go ahead. Not realizing that they were in that box that regulated the height because of the lower elevation. So that one stands, and it's fully inspected, fully permitted, both town and DEP.
I'm sorry, Jack, all these are on the east side?
Correct.
Okay.
Next slide. And we purposely didn't put the address in these. We're not trying to shame anybody or anything like that. We're just trying to give some examples of what's out there. And then there's Dock D, of course, there's two of them right there, side by side. And again, you'll notice that's the canvas type again with the aluminum structure. That one, the owners did come in. They asked for a permit. They were issued a permit. So, but again, there's no DEP. But again, when we call DEP, they really won't answer us with a straight answer on whether they care about them actually because of the non-existent seagrass now. I think before there was an issue, they weren't allowing them because they were afraid of all the shade that would kill the seagrass. But now they don't have any opinion, or actually they kind of want to stay out of this argument with us. So then there's Dock E, which is the next one. Again, this is another one. See, again, it's the covered canvas with the aluminum structure. But you'll notice all these canvas ones are different color canvases too. So there's that issue where you could have all different colors if you were to allow those. But again, here's another one that it does not have DEP, but then again, it's not over any seagrass. It's on a canal. And this one was actually constructed and installed prior to even applying for a permit. So then when it came in for a permit, that's when I had just started. I was unaware of this square box above the properties, but I was more concerned about the wind and the Florida Building Code, and inspected it based on the Florida Building Code and the engineering that was submitted with that. And it did pass the inspection once a permit was issued after the fact. So we have these that are remaining. We also have other property owners that are wondering why they can't have one too. And that's where we stand.
I'm curious, I went back and read the ordinance in a little more detail. It's not that long, I read it in detail, but I don't see any kind of design or architectural requirements, even if you can build an enclosure, even for the west side. If they could build a 15-foot, which is fine based on the elevation, I don't see any criteria for what that would look like or what we don't want it to look like. And so it seems to me that regardless of how we proceed here, that we probably should have some kind of criteria. Now, I don't know, does the DEP have criteria?
No, but there is a little bit of criteria as far as the roof structure goes. It can't be flat. And that was
Okay.
done for a reason. So it has to be pitched is what the criteria says. It has to be a pitched roof. Now, it doesn't say it has to be a solid structure. It doesn't say a canvas. It's very vague, so it's a.
And it could be any color, pink, magenta, or black, or,
Bless you.
Bless you.
okay. See, it seems to me that we ought to have some criteria at least for that. I mean, we can certainly talk about what we want on the east side versus the west side, but if you're going to put up any kind of an enclosure, we ought to have criteria for that, other than you can't be more than 15 feet high, it has to be a pitched roof. The other thing I'm kind of curious about, somebody told me, and I didn't verify this and don't know if it's true, this is one of the few ordinances that there's no variances allowed on?
Correct.
And
You read
why
it-
why is that?
Well, Glenn might help with
Okay.
that one, but there's a little part at the bottom of the actual ordinance that reflects that.
Yeah, it's one that, actually, one gentleman came before the Planning and Zoning Board asking for a variance, and they were not able to grant a variance because there's no authority for them to grant a variance in this situation. So this doesn't provide any procedure for the granting of a variance, and
Did we change that? I was talking with the town man, when When we did the dock ordinance change, like in January 2020, didn't we talk about, I thought we had a discussion about that we took that no variances would be allowed off, or we did discuss it because it was so odd. Anybody else remember that?
The way I've looked at what you did in 2020, and those amendments dealt primarily, I'm refreshing my memory here. They had more to do with like consent from the neighbors and things like that, and getting into riparian issues. The way it's worded right now, you can get a variance, but the variance has to do with the very technical specifications of it, like how far, it is from like the property across the canal from you. So it's not, doesn't provide any form of variance for just good reasons.
Sorry about that. I have to refresh my memory on that.
We actually hoped that there could be that chance with planning and zoning, but they
Well,
weren't able to.
It would seem to me that'd be reasonable approach, because, you've got a lot of different configurations out on the east side, where in some cases, it may be reasonable to, put up an enclosure without limiting the view, or without potentially damaging the seagrass. And it'd certainly be nice if we had the option to look at those. I don't think we're talking about 200 or 500 variances coming to us. I think it's going to be a very limited number, and it would seem to me that we should, maybe take a look at that. But that's just my thought, and I'm talking too much. We'll go to Vice Mayor Kurzman.
Yeah, got a question for council. We did issue 2 permits. Obviously, we cannot take them back. One of them still has to get DEP approval out of the 2. We cannot take a permit back, though, once it's issued without repercussion. Am I correct on that?
Actually, you can. It's not done often, but if a permit was issued in error, it can be rescinded, and the property owner can be required to put it back the way it's supposed to be. Again, that doesn't happen very often. I believe there was a case in Martin County, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, where someone built a home without a permit, and they had to take the whole, it's a home or a commercial building, whatever building it was, they had to take the whole building down.
It's a condominium complex.
Was that?
There's a condominium complex on Jensen Beach Boulevard.
So, without a permit. So, if we issued it in error, I'm not sure if the commission wants to go down that path, but if, I know when Dan prepared different options, we talked about, at least from a staff attorney perspective, coming up with some kind of a grandfather criteria for those that have been built, as long as the mayor mentioned, some kind of a box, some kind of a criteria around it. For example, do you require that everybody must get a DEP permit?
But it points.
That would seem like, to me, a pretty basic requirement. They either get a permit from DEP or a letter from DEP saying a permit's not required. Something to make sure, but we're not the DEP police either, so you may not want to go down that path. Do you want to have some standard as Dan has a number 1, height, size, color scheme, is it opaque, is it see-through? I mean, how do you want to regulate that for going forward? So the ones in the past, there's really not much that we're suggesting other than making sure that they have the proper permit from a building code standpoint. Like Jack said, he went out there on that one when he first started, and it met the wind load capacity. So you got to make sure they're safe.
Yeah, I feel that probably the 2 that we did sign off on, just leave them be. And from here forward, nobody else gets a permit on the east side. We've been here, like I said, we've listened to the lectures on seagrass. I do believe in the environment, and I'm going to honor what we have in our ordinances, that we do not issue any other permits. I'd leave the 2 alone right now that we have. They're issued in error. But rather than be a bad neighbor in that sense, as far as the council goes, I would not, or the commission, I would not want to yank those permits back. I don't think it would be ethical on that end. But the 2 that we signed off on, the other 3 would have to come down. And I do believe with the seagrass and everything else I heard, we had had a former mayor in here that's very deep into the environment. She pleaded with us, and we had expert after expert after expert come in explaining about the whole thing about seagrass, and I don't want it to be in vain.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes, before I say a few things, I wanted to ask Jack a question. There are no full enclosures allowed anywhere, correct? I know there's the boathouse, but that's like grandfathered in. There's no houses allowed, correct? You're
Correct.
only allowed a roof?
Right, that's part of the
Okay.
criteria that says that there's no sides allowed.
Okay,
Correct.
just wanted to confirm that.
The ones that are existing, because we do have some that
Right.
are existing. Correct.
Right. So this is kind of a messy thing. I don't feel, unfortunately, it's just kind of a problem we have, and the town made it, and nobody's fault specifically, but it's there. For the seagrass, I too, want to protect the environment wholeheartedly and agree with the seagrass, but I agree with protecting seagrass, but I was under the impression from the other meetings that the DEP was the one that monitored that, which I think they could do more effectively than the town of Sewalls Point, since they are the Department of Environmental Protection. And I would think that if they said it was okay to do a boat covering, then we should, trust that they're, making the right decision in that regard. So other than that, I'm sympathetic to boat owners. This town is right on the water. People like to protect their property. They're allowed on the west side. I would, especially with a color scheme and some kind, I would be open to staff maybe potentially coming up, grandfather in all the ones that are there, and require them to get all the permits they need in a timely fashion, not wasting time, and then coming up with a revised ordinance with some kind, maybe staff could come up with it with some kind of parameters, and with neighbor approval, or maybe even letters from the town to get neighbor approval, kind of strict standards to allow people to have these boat covers. I think that would, because I do believe there's one resident, and that's kind of what brought this all to light, who was following the procedures and noticed that other people were having the boat covers, so he went to the town, and that kind of, correct? Is that correct? That's kind of what sparked all this, so that, to not allow anymore, it just seems a little unfair, and it seems like a reasonable request, as a property owner in Sewalls Point, to want to put a reasonable cover over your boat, so.
Commissioner Fender.
Conversely, my thoughts on this haven't changed. We've talked about it a lot. When the decision came down the last time, it was related to the fact that we have an ordinance on the books, and I personally didn't feel compelled to change the good work of past commissions. And, I'm thankful for the work we've done here, because the ordinance is now super clear. The visuals help a great deal. But, the ordinance is what it is. I'm not passionate about not changing it. I'm a boater myself, but sitting here right now, I think the ordinance is the ordinance, and unless we have something clear and visual and crisp, I feel like we live with the ordinance that's on the books. That said, we have a process that's pretty clear, which is go to DEP, get approval from DEP. If DEP approves it, then come to Sewalls Point, and we follow our process, which is then ultimately to issue a permit. So all of these scenarios are different, and so if to me, if we issued you a permit, you have a permit, and I think that's your position as well, Vice Mayor, and so if you paid for your permit, you received your permit, and in good faith put up a roof in the past, then I don't think I wouldn't waste any time going back and changing it, even if it were a mistake that we made. And human error is possible in all cases, in all endeavors, including this, of course. And so it is what it is. But if you paid for your permit and you received it, we have other structures in town that also are both grandfathered and out of compliance, and we adhere those. However, conversely, since we have a stack of them, if you never got a permit and you put up a dock, this has nothing to do with docks, this is building houses and everything else. If you built a structure that wasn't permitted by either DEP or Sewalls Point, to me, you're in violation, and it is what it is. That said, take action on those if necessary, but going forward, the ordinance is clear unless you change it, and I wouldn't issue any more permits outside of the ordinance until you change the ordinance. So that's kind of how I feel on this process. It seems black and white to me, and unfortunately, that goes against some good folks, but also protects some other good folks as well, right? So.
Well, may I ask you a question in regards to that? If, for instance, somebody on the east side gets a DEP permit, put in a dock and an enclosure, and they've done the seagrass survey or evaluation or whatever, and DEP's okay with it, that wouldn't meet our ordinance. And so are you saying that we would?
I'm saying our ordinance is clear.
I'm saying our ordinance is clear, but do we want to do more than the DEP is requiring? And the reason we have the ordinance the way it is primarily for visual and also for seagrass. Now, if they've said essentially that the seagrass, their survey indicates it's not a problem, shouldn't we go ahead with what they're thinking or what they're permitting?
No.
Okay.
I mean, the reasoning is not DEP. If the DEP denies it, then we should deny it. But if the DEP approves it, then we should go through our process, which is, why is the ordinance in the book the way it is? And I assume it's for visual obstruction. And, like I said, I'm not super passionate about that, but plenty of smart people before us put those ordinances in the books for a reason and also said you can't even have a variance against it. So I have to take the good work of past commissions, and it's not my place to modify that unless, you make a strong truck ordinance case against it, so I'll certainly listen to it.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yeah,
That's
the issue that I still have with this is, number one, the DEP doesn't live here. Some of the experts we've seen do live here. DEP didn't see the pictures of the seagrass right where those boats are going. We
Well,
have.
they did surveys and.
Yeah, the surveys, but DEP is a rubber stamper. They look at something and there's a lot of things they approve that should never be approved. They've allowed buildings in wetlands here in Florida. They've allowed buildings to go up in the Everglades. I'm not going to go by the DEP. I think Sewalls Point has a higher standard than the DEP. I'd like to think that.
Well, that's why we come second.
Yes, and that's why it comes to us. And I don't think we should be a rubber stamper like the DEP. And to me, I moved here in 1981. I've seen them build in places I used to go fishing.
I'm guessing the DEP's not going to be happy with you saying that.
I don't care what they think. I mean, that's just fact. There's a lot of things they're going to do.
They do a lot of good work. Right?
You could take the lights, for example, that they were going to put up on Hutchinson Island. I didn't see the DEP jump up and down saying you can't do that because it's going to affect the turtles or anything. I don't think they care much about nature sometimes, to be honest with you. And this is something we got to, as a commission, we have to uphold this, and, the seagrass has got to be there, and we got to protect the manatees. And it's, the rule's there.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yeah, at this point, I can sense that any future ordinance change would take more research and putting together, so, but in the meantime, the non-conforming uses that we have, I think when I spoke with the attorney today, I think that because we have messed up so much, and it has not been clear, and people have taken advantage of that, they have put up boat covers without permits, that's not acceptable, but then I think that we don't want to punish the person who was trying to follow the rules and going through the right process, and we never even had a real conversation until after he started doing that. I think that they should all be grandfathered in, get the permits, and do some kind of window where if you want one, you apply within like whatever amount of time, and you can have the same experience that those people had. I think that's the most fair option. I think that person is being severely penalized for paying attention and following the rules. And that's what I think.
That almost looks like the, in Dan's executive summary of the option one. I think that's what you're saying, but Commissioner Fender.
Well, I'm saying the opposite. I don't think you should incent the people who did not follow the rules, right? What I heard you say is that, several people just decided to put a dock, build a structure, this happens to be a dock, without a permit and got away with it, and now we found them, and okay, so let's grandfather them.
Well, it's just that at least 3 of them, it's very nebulous, and they, you know, I spoke to.
About not getting a permit.
Well, the one that got, you're talking about the 2 town permits, Jack issued mistakenly a permit.
Mistakes happen. I'm talking about those that did not ever apply for a permit and built a structure.
Oh, well, clearly I said that I was open to changing the ordinance, so I think it's, you know, along that vein, I think that, you know, like I said, you have a boat, you want to protect it, you know.
Yeah, of course.
So I don't approve of that. I'm very, you know, you have I said before that if there's a code, I was the one that said go enforce the code when we decided that we weren't going to do anything. And then all the residents got up in arms. They had good stories. I saw how much the town kind of messed up, and like it was all kind of all over the place. It's a big confusing mess. So I think this is, in my opinion, the most fair.
That much. I mean, a mistake happened, but
No, there was more than one mistake.
no, 2. I mean, my point is,
Anyways,
not every, if a permit was not applied for, that's not a mistake on our part.
Yeah, I mean, that's a valid, yeah, if you wanted to, you know, I'm just one of 5. So, you know, if you want to.
Donna, is there any public comment?
What's the, no, there wasn't.
No public comment on this?
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yeah.
Fill out a
it's-
form and send it in. We'd love to hear from you.
I thought I had, because this is on the agenda, I know we have, form for that.
Yeah, let me just.
Because all these people, there's got to be
Yeah,
comment out there.
yeah, pretty much what I wanted to say, though, as I was getting called upon. If I build an addition in my house, above my garage, no permit, building inspector, what's going to happen to me if you find out about it? I build an extension above my garage, I do my own electric, I do my own plumbing. What happens? And if it doesn't comply, I mean, number 1, I'm doing something illegal. I broke the law. Number 2, I could be creating a hazard. Number 3, it wasn't even illegal that I did it. This is illegal. You put something up without a permit that's already against the ordinance. I'm not going to reward people that do that. It sets a bad precedence. And it's not good for people that do put in their permits legally, that go the legal route. We're encouraging, go ahead, do it later on. If you get caught, you'll put your permit in then. I don't like it, it stinks. The 2 people that got signed off,
Yes,
they're
my question. Let me
keepers.
answer.
I'm sorry, Jack, go ahead.
Oh, you were asking what would happen.
Yes.
And it all depends, basically, what the infraction was and what would they have to do to make it comply. Could it comply? If there's no way it could comply, they would have to remove it then. So there's you know, there's penalties, of course, too, and then there's the added expense of having engineers certify stuff and everything like that. So it all depends. It's not an easy answer to say what would happen if somebody built something without a permit.
Thank you, Jack, I appreciate it.
Okay, I guess we do have one public comment. Tom Collins, please come on up, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I live at 86 North Sewalls Point. When I went to put my cover in, I contacted a company. I asked them, do we need a permit for this? They're saying, absolutely not. We built these things all over the state of Florida, and there's no permit required, okay? I talked to all my neighbors, I showed them what I was looking to do, and they all approved of it and everything else. After the fact, one of my neighbors was moving out, on his way out, he reported me because I didn't have a permit for the cover. Since then, I got a notice, I came in, I applied for the permit, Jack came out, approved the permit, and that's where we're at this time. All these structures, as far as the campuses, I don't know if you're aware, but they can be taken down in about an hour and a half. You can actually take the cover down in less than 5 minutes. Get an X-Acto blade, put it on a thing, if there's a storm coming, you basically clip them all off. The canvas goes to one side, you take it down. The structure's good for 180 miles an hour. I'd also like to know how many boat covers are on the west side that have no permits at all. You're pointing fingers at everybody on the east side, and I don't know about there's 6 houses. Nobody's ever complained about them, and we never had any issues. Now all of a sudden, some guy's trying to put one up, and you know the cost of boats these days. You wouldn't have your Lamborghini sitting outside. Why would you have your $300,000 or $400,000 boat? You know, you're putting a cover that's, I'm not talking about a house. You're putting a cover that's basically suspended and you're worried about grass permits and everything, I would look at, if you're looking to get a permit in the future, put 500 hours up towards the grass, seagrass, so you're actually helping the seagrass, you're donating money, you're getting a permit, you have your 4 neighbors or your neighbors around you on either side, or whoever's going to see it, sign off on it, and, you know, rather than say, oh, you can't have a building structure, and there's 6 other people here to have it, and there's 25 on the west side that have it. And again, yeah, it looks like you're pointing out fingers on people on the east side, who there's never been a complaint, to my knowledge, of anybody on that east side. You know, I don't know why we're being singled out. And again, when I went to go get this building, I talked to the supplier, and they told me you didn't need a permit, because they put them up all over the state of Florida with no permits. What does St. Lucie do? Do they require a permit for those? Other counties, I mean, you know, just because they're Sewalls Point doesn't have to mean, we have to restrict everything that's done over here. I think it's, you know, you're not looking at something that's hideous looking. I got a teal cover. All my neighbors love it. My next door neighbor wants to put one up. Once he found out this guy's going to put one up, I'm not going through all that. You know, it's nonsense. So that's my point. Thank you for all your.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, well, we've batted this run around again. I'm not sure, have we gone full circle as we normally have, or any recommendations? You know, the only thing I would like to add to this, first of all, I think regardless of what we decide here, is that we don't have standards for style, color scheme, opacity, condition, that kind of thing in the current ordinance. So I really think we need to do that, because if you have somebody who can legitimately put a covering on the dock on the west side, what's the criteria for what he puts up there? We don't have that, and I think we definitely need to amend the current ordinance to put in that criteria. I guess the other thing I would like to see is, because, and I don't know if we can do this, and Glenn, maybe you can tell me, I mean, we're not in a world of absolutes. I mean, there could be a case on the east side that really wouldn't, even though it may not meet the letter of the law for the ordinance, practically it has no effect, you know, by putting in maybe a tree's blocking it, or it's in one of the canals or whatever. It seems to me there should be at least a mechanism for somebody to come and discuss that with us. And apparently it doesn't look like there is that mechanism for a variance right now. So I don't know how we do that, but I would certainly hope that we could. I'm sorry, Commissioner Campbell?
No, I agree with where you're going. I wanted things to kind of coalesce a little, and I don't know if I can be as detail-oriented, but there are some things that I think need to be put out there. First of all, you're going to staff, and staff is saying we have a problem, and they're giving us a framework of solutions. So when one of my employees says I have a problem, I say, good, come back to me with a solution. So let's go back to staff, let them start flushing through some of these things, and I think that, you know, we've got some possibilities. The other thing is we've got to care for Jack. I mean, he's the one that's delivering these news. We inadvertently put him in the line of fire, and we need to have your back. So I want you to tell us, what can we do to make this thing work? I think we need to probably tweak it. It might take a while, but I think we've got some framework here. I respect Vice Mayor, but I disagree with him on his opinions on DEP, and our grant writer probably really wants us to clarify that because they are the source of a lot of assistance to us right now. And then lastly, to kind of echo the mayor's sentiments, due process is a part of, you know, American law, and to be able to, you know, appeal and to go through, whether it's your peers or your commission, I think that process needs to be elaborated a little bit more. We are all neighbors, and despite what some people think, yes, we are Mayberry. We want to be Mayberry, and that means being able to kind of work through things. So I would like to maybe suggest with Commissioner Mayfield and the mayor, kind of more weigh in on your side where we try to come up with something based upon what the staff, can suggest, and, respect the role of DEP. And, maybe we could come out of this thing with, a little bit more satisfaction.
And I have no particular problem. As a matter of fact, I think it's a great suggestion that Mr. Collins made, that, even if DEP has done a seagrass survey or whatever, that we certainly can include, a permit fee associated with restoring seagrass. And there are, we can talk to the people of Florida Oceanographic. I'm sure they have such a fund set up, and if it's local, they will plant the grass here as opposed to, Fort Pierce or somewhere else. So, and I don't think the boat owners would have a problem with that kind of an additional fee, because they understand, and they want to be environmentally conscious too. They're not trying to ruin the environment as well. Commissioner Mayfield?
Gosh, I don't remember exactly what I was going to say. I was thinking about other things. I wanted to ask staff, are you looking for specific direction on the 5 docks at this point? Is that something that you're looking for?
On the 5 docks?
Or, I'm sorry, the 5.
coverings?
Yeah.
I think if it sounds like I'm hearing that there may be some opening for considering an amendment to the ordinance to consider certain things. And so in light of that, I think we would be okay just leaving status quo for the existing docks as we work through the ordinance amendment process and take it up again at the conclusion. So
Okay.
maybe I said too much.
No, that
Okay.
sounds great. I know, Mayor, you talked about getting more specific. I think I was the only one that mentioned actually changing it to allow east side people. I agree with getting more specific as to color, what it looks like, aesthetics. I think I was the only one that said the east side allowing them. So in the meantime, I agree with you in terms of being able to go before the BZA or somebody for a variance. I'm trying to address the homeowner who is a little bit in limbo right now, but, because I haven't looked, and we have to refresh my memory on that ordinance, but whether they're allowed a variance or not, I think that's something that could be changed more quickly, or I have to look at it, but I would like to give that option to
Oh, okay.
our
Yeah.
residents in the meantime.
Like fast track a portion of it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's reasonable. Vice Mayor Kurtzman?
Yeah, something in a compromise that can be done possibly would be the awning, if it's, the issue is really the sun getting through to the water. If they could make a transparent awning, Mr. Collins, maybe you could look into that. That might be something worth looking into, and I feel that would be a worthwhile compromise for both ends. And this way, the seagrass will get its sun and be allowed to survive, and I wonder if that's a possibility. And that's something I would ask staff to look into. If we could look into transparent awnings for the...
Is that going to shade the boat? That's what they're trying to do, is
I
protect the
think,
boat.
I think
Well,
it
it
defeated the
keeps it
purpose
from-
of the enclosure.
Could help with birds, but
Yeah.
Well, OPAS said he was one of the things we put on the list, so we could certainly ask the boaters.
It's an SAT word.
Thank you.
I like that.
Mr. Torsidia?
So if I could, I'm going to recap what I think we're hearing is to essentially grandfather in the existing 5 or 6 on the east side, provided they get either a DEP permit or a waiver letter from DEP, get a structural permit from Jack to make sure they're structurally sound, and pay some type of a fee, maybe $500 for restoration of seagrass.
I hadn't necessarily thought about the existing ones on the east side. I was thinking more about the new ones, or the potential for new ones on the east side.
Okay.
But I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I think that would work as well. And the money number, I think I read somewhere or one of the presentations, it costs about $50,000 an acre to plant and maintain seagrass. So, $500 might be a good number, but we may want to talk with the Florida Oceanographic young lady who was here, did such a terrific job on the presentation.
And I guess the other question was, as part of option 2, there was item number 3, include any owner who's made application. And I think that goes to, what Mr. Mayfield was talking about, their person who kind of brought this forward, tried to do all the right things, and I don't know whether you want to include that person in this if you've made application already, so you have the ones that are already built, and then someone that's trying to get built. Do you put that person in the same category as long as he pays, at least as long as he gets his DEP permit and structural engineering permit? So kind of breaking it up into 2, those that were, plus this one gentleman, and then I'm hearing in the future, maybe come up with a whole different plan, but that may take a while to flesh that out.
That may take a while, and of course, when we're talking about revising the orders, we're talking about the east side and the west side in terms of what the enclosure looks like and the criteria for the enclosure as well.
Well, unless you change that riparian rule, then there wouldn't be any more on the east side, right?
Well, I'm not sure we necessarily want to change the.
Right, so it would just be the-
riparian rule, because we, as Commissioner Fender mentioned, it's been there, it was probably put in
Right.
there for a good reason, but we should certainly look at potential variances if there's a
Okay,
good reason,
yeah.
So
So address the variance issue too that we don't know about fully, whether, right?
So until you develop the next generation ordinance variance procedure, you kind of be slamming the door, saying the door's shut, the door should have been shut, somehow it got cracked open over the years.
Can we look at that?
You're going
variance
to
thing
allow
again?
these
Can we look
5
at that
plus
variance
1,
thing again that you had up?
and then everything else is stopped until a new process is developed, which might include, is that, and
Well, the only thing I'm thinking, what you're saying makes perfect sense, of course. At the same time, the wheels of government do not turn quickly here. So it might be 6, 8 months before we can get this thing, back to the point where it's up here for more discussion and review. And people in the meantime are in complete limbo, and that's, I wish we didn't have to do
I've
that.
asked the manager to take up the part of the code that discusses variances. Could we take a look at that? Because I don't see the words, "there will be no variances." Maybe there's different parts of the law that variances can be applied, and I do see it says the town commission, which typically it's the BZA. I kind of like when the BZA does the variances.
So maybe we did take it out. That's what I'm
Well, I don't
saying.
know.
Maybe
Here it
that
is.
long ago, there was a line I thought that said, no variances are allowed. I think that's what
Well,
we had
we've
to
got
do.
our attorney. Why don't you
Yeah.
take a look at it and tell us, rather than batting around what we've heard, is this Muni code?
Yes.
Yes.
so you may vary the technical requirements and construction standards for marine structures set forth in this ordinance that we're talking about, section 62, 172, and 171. But that's it. It doesn't give you the authority to register, to vary more than just technical requirements and construction standards.
Okay.
You could change that.
Okay.
You obviously could say give yourself more leeway, more ability, but it's been limited to just those items for whatever reason when this ordinance was first passed.
It says it's February 25th, 2020.
Well, that was when it was revised. I don't know if that,
And technical requirements and construction standards would not include allowing a boat cover? Is that what you're saying?
Why is that? I mean, it seems
Exactly.
like you're saying you can
Yeah,
get
it
variance.
sounds like
I
it says that
wouldn't.
you could.
That's why I wanted us to talk about it.
Which part are you?
62, 171, what can be amended?
176. Oh, okay, gotcha.
May vary any of the technical requirements and construction standards. That's pretty clear to me.
Jen, could you go to that 82, 116, 111 that refers to there? I kind of think you have to look at that too.
Wasn't this done at the same time where the pitched roof was done?
Yeah, can you go back to 82, 111 to 116. You started, go to 111.
82,
Yeah.
111? Okay.
111. So that talks about variance in general. Okay, 112 you can skip. 113. Can you scroll?
Where,
to-
just down?
Yeah,
Okay.
just more applications.
I see the word variance an awful lot in there for not having,
Where did we get the idea that this was not allowed?
I swear it used to be that way, and I think we changed
Yeah,
it.
and I remember that too.
I don't swear that, because clearly I'm not clear. I totally don't.
Prohibited docks. Section says prohibited docks.
We need to see the old version. Anyway,
What section would that be, Jack?
I don't know the section, but if you just put in
Uh,
docks, it
item
will
B.
come up prohibited. Is
No non-conforming use
62-174.
it 134?
What is it?
shall be considered
174.
grounds for
you got it right there.
No, that's the,
Well, it sounds like this is not particularly clear, and perhaps, Glenn, you can do all the necessary research and get back with us.
Because I do remember researching this when that gentleman applied, and there was some provision in the code that was very clear that they could not grant a variance.
Okay, would you get,
So let's
get
bring
back
that
to us on
back,
that?
yes.
Okay. I think we made progress, actually, because up to this
I don't
point,
know,
it
I've got a
was,
headache, so I guess we have made progress.
that's the definition. I mean, we did this, the first 72 issues in 13 minutes, and that one took us about an hour and a half, so it's par for the course.
Okay. Do you know what to do now, Jack? I think it's a reasonable question, no?
We'll work up some
Okay.
modifications.
All right, we're up to closing comments. Mr. Hudson?
Yeah, just one. The mayor and I, we've been working on this ribbon cutting. We really hadn't heard from the governor. We heard from the governor's office, but we hadn't got any suggested dates. So we went ahead and reached out to the other local elected officials, and of course, they came back with, when do you want to do it? So I'm going to suggest that we start to plan the ribbon cutting for the South Sewalls Point Road project the week of April 18th. That's the week after Easter, and suggest that we narrow it down to Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in that time frame and start working toward a date specific. So that's all I have.
Okay, that sounds like that'll work. Any commissioner comments?
Like a brother and a sister.
Commissioner Mayfield?
yes, I wanted to thank the mayor. I think you went to the Treasure Coast Regional League of Cities lunch.
I
that
did.
I was unable to attend because I was out of town, so I wanted to say thank you.
I did. They didn't have a whole lot of new information. They had a presentation by FP&L similar to what we did, but of course, the issues there are different. They didn't spend half an hour talking about trees. They talked more about undergrounding and some other things, but also an excellent presentation.
Okay, well, thank you, I appreciate that. And those lunch meetings they have once a quarter are open to all commissioners and town managers, just in case you forgot.
They had it at the Vero Beach.
It's
Yacht
usually a
Club.
fun place, yeah. They do a good job. All right, that's it, thank you.
Commissioner Fender?
Just anecdotally, this came across my desk today, and you
Was
brought
that
up
your one?
undergrounding. I put a copy of this, a color version, on each of your desks this morning. This is just a notification from the city of Stewart that they are starting their undergrounding project for all of the downtown area, and you can see from the diagram what that entails. But I thought it was interesting that we might get rid of some overhead lines in the city of Stewart. It'd be nice to get them elsewhere, but that's a start.
Right, and you also heard say they don't really have any particular schedule, and you might be next, or you might be in 30 years. So,
Do you know what they paid?
I don't.
No, I
I didn't hear anything about it, just I was
No, I
surprised to
think-
see the notification.
I think and that was kind of the interesting part of that discussion a couple weeks ago, was they've got a kind of a PSC directive to start undergrounding lines, and that's not going to cost anything. So if we decide that if we want to underground a line before they're ready to do it, we'll be paying for it. Otherwise, it'll eventually be, like I said, it could be 30 years, but what they're doing right now is not going to cost, it's going to cost all all of FPL's ratepayers, obviously, at the end, but there's no specific cost related to this for the people of Stewart.
What's the reason for that, you know?
Well, I think they,
Is that true? They're doing this for free?
yeah.
For cities too?
Yes,
Oh, wow.
but I mean, that's an area that, they go back and they'll identify areas where they have problems, outages or, whatever, and one of the ways of, making it better is to underground it. So they'll go back and they have, a lot of metrics for determining which areas they want to underground and what, based on cost, based on outages. And so obviously this one has finally made it to the top of the list. That doesn't mean that any of our undergrounding will ever make it to the top of the list. Commissioner Campo.
Yes, since we have everyone in the room and we have sunshine and it's difficult to have a conversation, I wanted to get an up-to-date status of the project that we've had that the then Mayor Mayfield got funding from the Florida Legislature to provide septic to sewer conversion for the 4 commercial buildings on A1A. I've been talking about this for a while. As the town hall, we are to provide an example. If we want other people to get off of septic, we should be setting an example. We've got funding that the mayor worked hard for. There's a lot of moving parts. There's engineering, there's legal. Since, we are all looking to help with the rivers and we're all concerned about septic to sewer, I think the commission, I'm going to talk to my commissioners right now before the staff to see if they agree with me that they think this is a high priority. And I know we've got things that were in the works, but I think because we've got a great manager and a great attorney and a great engineer, we need to figure out, what the status is. We've got a commercial building that's on the bank of the river with a septic tank that's about 30 feet, and it's the bank is, susceptible to erosion. We've got town hall that should be setting an example for septic to sewer conversion. And we've got 2 commercial buildings in the middle. One is getting pumped out by a septic truck every 2 to 3 weeks. And that's been going on for 3 or 4 years. So I know we wanted the whole enchilada with, some of us wanted the whole enchilada in South Sewalls Point. I got to be careful there. But that's delayed. So we've got the funds, we've got people that are interested, and we've got the professionals here, and not to throw anyone, any shade, but I think we really need to, as a commission, confirm that this is a priority and to do what we need in order to move that thing along. Would any commissioner disagree that we should be proceeding on that project?
I don't think so. As a matter of fact, I kind of remember, didn't we talk about this maybe just a couple of weeks ago?
I thought that the status was, we talked about it, and they were going to reach out, I don't know if it was to reach out to the business owners to try to get them to contribute their share that they needed to,
And to sign up.
yeah.
So I don't think there's anything on this side that's
Okay,
holding it up.
okay.
So yes,
So-
it's a priority.
So on this side, so then on the other side, I know that there's a lot of moving parts. I know we're throwing a lot at Dan. I know we're throwing a lot at all of you. But I thought since everyone is here, and sometimes Glenn comes to meetings, sometimes he doesn't come to meetings, we would just take advantage of the dialogue and get what the most current status is. And, I've talked with...
Let me give just a quick overview. We have been in communication with representatives of the 2 buildings I'm going to say in the middle, for lack of a better word, and then the one on the end. The 2 in the middle are owned by one owner. I have the sense that they would sign an agreement as soon as we can put the words on the paper, and they're ready to go. The one on the end is a condominium ownership. It'll take a little bit more time to get them to find out where they are, but they do have more interest than they've ever had in the past, from what I can tell. I have talked with the HOA president, and So the thought right now is to give them a letter of intent, that it would give them something to base, it basically would frame out the funding, what they're going to be expected to do. They're going to have to give us like easements and, temporary construction easements and some permanent easements where the line goes. So just like a 2-page, like non-binding letter of intent. And as I said, I believe the 2 buildings in the middle are ready to go. The one on the end, at least that would give them something for their HOA to begin to digest and figure out how they want to respond to it. So I think that could probably be ready to go this week. And so,
Joe, you want to add something? Do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, just, so the parts of this are pretty straightforward. Dan has explained the part that we need to do with the property owners, right? There's 4 buildings, and we need to make sure we get their buy-in in reference to what they're going to be committing to. So obviously, that's the agreement that we're putting together. I think Glenn's office has been working on that. We kind of put some ideas on paper. And so there's the agreement with the property owners, because I want to remind you all, you are, the grant you're getting, basically you have to spend the money to get reimbursed, and it has to go through the town. That's the way the DEP has set this up, that we have to be the person in overseeing the work. So that's not unusual. We do that all the time, and we've done that at North Sewalls Point. So there's a couple things. Basically, we have the agreement with the property owners, and they need to know that that once we get into this process, there's going to be design, permitting, bidding, and then they'll have an option to stay in the program, or they'll say yes or no to that, and then basically we'll go to construction. Same thing we did in North Sewalls Point. The little difference here is we are talking commercial properties, and Martin County Utilities treats commercial different than residential. Okay, they basically, the way it would normally work for a commercial business is they basically, the property owner business owner has to build the facilities, basically get it permitted to Martin County Utilities, say that they have everything in place, the county agrees to it, they sign an agreement for what they call a developer's agreement, and says this is how many ERCs you have, and we will provide service, okay? And you go through a process for that. That's something that will happen here, and we can start moving on that at any time, but I think we want to make sure we know who wants to participate, which is the reason why the property owners are the first item that we want to take care of. Anyways, the typical deal with the county on that is basically, they're not, I know there's some concern of maybe, is the county going to contribute to this? On a business, they typically do not. They do on a single-family residential, but they don't contribute to these. And so that's something you need to decide if you're going to pressure the county to put some money into the program. The other thing is the way it worked for example, North Sewalls Point on the residential side is basically basically the facilities, the grinder stations and so forth were actually maintained by the utility. In this case, the property owners, the town hall, other property owners will have to maintain these grinder systems. The county utility will not be doing that. And so that's a little different between a commercial business and a single family. And so again, you can put out ideas with the utilities, but they have these regulations already in place. So I just want you to know what I've heard. So again, we've talked about the commitment by the property owners. The second thing is DEP has an agreement that is being some modifications to, because as you know, we had an agreement that I mentioned previously that is in place, but the fact of the matter, it didn't spend all the money. So it kind of left us up in the air how we spent the money. It gave $35,000 to each of the buildings, and quite frankly, there was still money left over at $185,000. So we're getting that fixed up at the same time. So we got the agreement with the DEP that's being modified. We got the agreement with the property owners. Whenever you tell me to, I'll go finish the design, permitting, bidding, go to construction. Martin County Utilities, I did reach out to them today, basically just to make sure I know the amount of ERCs, because obviously these business owners are going to be buying ERCs for their buildings, right? So they want to know there's an impact fee, $2,100 per ERC, equivalent residential unit connection. We did find, what was good, we got the number down, that seems to be reasonable for the buildings based on, we did a 2A square footage, we did it based on their actual water use, because that's typically how they do it, and I think there's a total of 7 ERCs between all the buildings, which is good news, okay?
7 for 4 buildings? No,
So it's
those
trying to
20,
find the piece of paper, but it's
those 20.
It's 3, let me find the paper because I don't want to tell you a lie. It's piece of paper. Find that real quick. Let me grab that real quick.
So while we have a second, Mayor, are you familiar with septic to sewer conversions? No. My question is it usual for the utility to not be helpful to commercial buildings like what we're hearing? And do you think that we would have some leeway in approaching the county and saying, hey, we would like to give you a perpetual source of income by connecting septic to sewer with these 4 properties? Do you think we'd have a leg to stand on?
I don't think you have a whole lot of leverage there, especially if we're talking 7 or 8 ERCs.
I thought it was 20 to 25.
Well, even if it's 20 to 25, that's nothing, that's not really worth talking about. And they're not-
But Joe's talking about an impact fee instead of, I mean, when we did North Sewell's Point, we had over $100,000. We spent $500 and they gave us over $100,000 of, I don't know what they call it. What do you call that in your world? In my world, they call it
Capital improvement charges, impact
Kickback.
fees, whatever. No, it's not kickback. No, a capital improvement charge or impact fee, it's a pay-forward program.
pay forward program.
Pay forward, so you're collecting impact fees so you can do additional work in the future.
Right.
So it really is an important feature of a water or wastewater system.
So rather than have that, Joe's talking about a $2,100 impact fee, rather than rebating or the capital improvement fee. I mean, it seems like it's going in the wrong direction.
The 2,100 he's talking about is the capital improvement charge.
Capital improvement charge.
Called impact fee or capital improvement charge, really essentially the same thing.
But in North Sewell's Point, they gave money to us. Now they're looking for us because it's commercial to give money to them.
Well, I think the other thing was the total cost there, what was it, $8,000 or $9,000 for somebody to hook in?
Right.
They really took into consideration the capital improvement charge in that number. It may not have broken it out as a separate line item, but
So part of that $8,000 was,
I think so.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
I think so.
So the number, just so you know, is basically there's 4 ERCs for, there's 4 ERCs for the 2 buildings, 3 for the building on the river, and 2 ERCs here. So that,
Wow.
whatever, there's a total of 9. I was off by 2.
And they measure that by water usage?
Yes, essentially they'll look at the water usage. Actually, we thought that they'll do it 2 ways, either by water usage or square footage. And so basically, they're again, I just want to let you know, there's 9 ERCs. What you're thinking about, and we put in the grant, is how many businesses were affected when you got into 24, okay? It was the number of business. Well, not every business uses 1 ERC like a house.
Okay. Well, so from this perspective of the capital improvement fee, if we're only 7, then that should lower the overall amount and lower the amount moving forward.
Yeah, and again, my number's 9. I just want,
Okay,
I
9.
went from 7 to
Okay,
9.
so let me just ask one other question. Is there any, you talked about contracts and contracts and contract. When I hear contract, I think of Glenn. So is there any DEP stuff that you're working on? Okay. So is there any DEP stuff that you're working on, Glenn, that the commission could help clarify that we are determined to move forward in this? Is there any back and forth, or is there any?
Joe, I don't think having any DEP, we're coming up with the contract really with the owners. That's what we've been circulating around. The DEP piece.
You're working on the one for the owners.
Right.
The one with with DEP, we've been working with DEP and coming up with making sure that they amend the agreement to reflect, what we want to make sure that happens is we get total use of the $185,000 they've committed. And so the question is, if we don't get everybody participating, let's just say we have Town Hall and the 2 commercial buildings next to us, and then the other building doesn't participate, we want to take the rest of the money and use it here. So the point we were trying to do is let's get the maximum amount of money from the grant, and that's what we were trying to get adjusted in that grant. And they've been willing to listen to that, and I think they may have a modified agreements somewhere. I don't know if they.
Yeah, I don't think the DEP amendment is going to be an issue. It's
Okay.
pretty simple. It's like one page. It's not complicated at all, so.
Well,
But it's a step in the process that has to
Right.
be taken, so.
And we all know that the pipe is already this side of A1A, okay? So that's, it's good. All right, well, thank you for allowing me to grill you, and hopefully we can still be friends.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes, sorry, I remembered something, all this septic to sewer talk, I know we all already got the email, but just wanted to say again that Sewalls Point did not get any money in the appropriations requests that were made, the $1 million for Phase 3 and $800,000 for septic to sewer. So that's bad news for some people, and as Commissioner Campo said, some people will be pleased. But overall, I believe it's, it was a good, it would have been great for the town, but it was always just a hope, and better luck next time.
Well, I think is critical here is that when we get the plan, or that you're working on, Joe, the engineering design report, we'll have a lot better clarification, and then we can really go to, these granting authorities and say, here's what we're going to do, or here's what the residents have decided we want to do. And I think the closer you are to putting a shovel in the ground, the better chance you have of getting a grant. If it's an idea out there, you're not getting any grants. It's just not the way it's going to work.
Is there a backstory there, or know what happened?
It's all like just, you get it, you don't, it didn't work out. I think it's all just political, this is my impression, is
Do
it's,
we have any information on it?
she's out there, are you calling her up?
In a minute, I will, if she wants to.
Please feel free to come up and educate us.
Come on down, you're the next contestant.
So the way that the appropriations requests work is very weird, especially in the state of Florida. And I say this over and over again, and I'm going to be as direct as possible too. It's a very political process. So it's one of those things that you have to carry from start to finish. A lot of you guys are super aware of that. I believe that this year, those 2 appropriations, one of them, we know that there were a couple residents who were displeased or were outspoken about not being in favor of it. And then the other project, which was for the project in which we were granted from DEP the funding, I think that effort needs to get carried, especially towards the last couple weeks of the budget process, a little bit closer to the finish line. I think just the transitions in general were part of it, and I'm not signed up to be a lobbyist for you all. It's something that's certainly in my wheelhouse, and I would more than be happy to do in the future to represent you all on that level. I've just been a technical writer, and I think that having somebody who understands the process, who's there, because it's a lot of work for you all to keep your thumb on that, especially through the busyness of the 60 days. So I'd be more than happy in the future to represent you all to get that from start to finish in the appropriations process specifically. So that's throughout the legislative session. So I think it's kind of like Commissioner Mayfield said, it's not the surest process. It's not the easiest way to get funding. The grants are much more technical, much more scientific, much easier in negotiations. If you have a project that's ready to go, this one, it's who's talking to who at the right time and the right way. So I don't think you all did anything, and I don't think the town did anything really to ruin that process or to ensure that we didn't get it. I think it's just how it goes.
But it probably wouldn't have hurt to, torture them a little more often during the last 2 or 3 weeks of the session.
Yeah,
which
I
we probably didn't do that very well.
Sure, I can only imagine what our elected officials experience in those last 2 weeks. I mean, one minute they're talking about a topic like septic to sewer, and the next they're talking about service monkeys and crazy topics that you couldn't fathom. So it's kind of a very, very, it's a circus. And so being a part of that is part of it.
That was helpful. Thank you.
But I'll always recommend going the grant route. That's just, you have control over it. You feel like there's that direct connection. You feel like you can communicate to people how valuable that project is in a very specific way, whereas trying to communicate it to two bodies, right, in the legislature and then the executive branch, it's quite chaotic.
I do believe having someone to represent the town's interest in those matters would be a big help.
I agree. Thank you,
Thanks,
Chloe.
Thank you all.
Mr. Hudson, you have anything further?
Nope.
Okay, any other commission comments? We tortured you enough for the evening? Okay, motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
We're adjourned. Thank you.